when people watched it originally in 1937 in the theaters. It was an amazing experience because for most people, it was the first color movie. But second of all, people had so connected emotionally with the character of Snow White that when she eats from the apple and she dies, people were literally weeping in the theater because they liked the character of Snow White so much.
Okay, girl, buckle up, because the Snow White mess just took a hard left. And this time, it's Netflix that's kicking down the castle doors.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again.
Just as Disney's Snow White remake spirals into an unwatchable disaster, Netflix is now in talks to launch its own version of the iconic fairy tale. And yes, it's looking messy. Industry sources are buzzing that the streaming giant is preparing to develop a bold, darker reimagining of Snow White. Something less wholesome bedtime story, more Game of Thrones meets Wednesday. And why now? Because Disney left the door wide open.
Because right now there's more dwarves on this podcast than there are in the new Snow White movie.
The public is dragging their version before it even hits theaters. The brand is shaken. The fan base, splintered, and Netflix, they smell blood, but here's where it gets wild. They're reportedly not avoiding the drama. They want to capitalize on it. They want a Snow White for the people who are tired of Disney's fairy dust and fake smiles. They want a lead who's raw, edgy, complicated. They want the version that actually bites the apple back. And guess who's being floated as the face of this twisted reboot? Not Rachel Zegler, but a new face who's already causing chaos on social media. And fans are going feral.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Say it louder so your other eye can hear you.
So we didn't do that this time.
Forget cute animal sidekicks and enchanted kisses. Netflix's vision of Snow White is reportedly darker, sharper, and unapologetically bold. We're talking a corrupt royal family, a poisoned court full of secrets, 7 morally gray outcasts who aren't dwarfs, but exiled rebels, and a Snow White who doesn't wait for a prince. She burns the whole kingdom down. This is not the childhood fairy tale your grandma read. This is a modern, savage fairy tale with fangs. Think betrayal, bloodlines, and beauty turned into a weapon. Think power struggles, forbidden love, and the stepmother being just the beginning, not the final boss. Netflix isn't looking to recreate Disney's mess. They're looking to replace the entire legacy.
There was an in-depth piece, like a behind-the-scenes piece, talking about how they've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years now. Their star, Rachel Zegler, was so unlikable, said she hated Snow White, mocked the fact that there was a prince, and that she falls in love as opposed to leaning into her own power. We could go on.
For decades, Disney's version of Snow White has been the default, the animated classic, the part character, the fairy tale blueprint. But with this new project in development, Netflix is openly challenging Disney's grip on the story. And fans are ready. People are already commenting things like, if Netflix does it right, this could erase the Disney version. This is the Snow White I've been waiting for. I'd rather watch Netflix's version before I touch the Disney one again. And inside Disney, let's just say the energy is not cute. Executives are reportedly scrambling to control the PR fallout. Internal discussions are turning icy, and the timing couldn't be worse, because Disney hasn't even released their remake yet, and they're already being overshadowed.
Come on.
That's the face of a serial killer.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button. I don't need your business.
Noted.
Thanks.
Even though Netflix is reportedly eyeing a new face for their reboot, Rachel Zegler's name hasn't disappeared from the conversation. Some fans are calling for her to be recast. Others want her to get a second shot outside of Disney. And Netflix? They know that bringing Rachel into their version would set the internet on fire. It would be the ultimate plot twist. Disney's Snow White becomes Netflix's villain. Or anti-hero. Because let's be real, at this point, Rachel doesn't need a perfect fairy tale. She needs a role that lets her be complicated, sharp, powerful, and Netflix might just hand her the apple and say, go off.
I'm a narcissist.
That she is. And by the way, the producer of Snow White, his son, knows it.
So here's what we know. Netflix is planning a bold, dark, and totally reimagined version of Snow White. And they're not hiding the fact that it's a direct answer to Disney's disaster. But what's got people really gagging right now? The casting conversation. Because Netflix isn't just looking for a lead actress. They're looking for a statement. And according to Inside Chatter, they're narrowing in on 2 types of stars: a rising Gen Z it girl with no studio baggage, someone fresh, edgy, and ready to take over, or a controversial comeback queen who knows how to work the press, flip a narrative, and pull audiences in just by existing. So naturally, one name keeps popping up over and over again: Rachel Zegler. But not as your typical Disney princess. This time, people want her to play the villain.
Literally no offense to anything. They're very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that backward story of 7 dwarves living in a cave. What the are you doing, man?
If you think people are tired of Rachel, think again. Now that Disney's version is flopping before it even premieres, the internet is rethinking everything, and some of the loudest voices on social media are calling for a full circle moment. Give Rachel the villain role. Let her be evil and hot. Put her in a corset and let her cause problems on purpose. If Netflix makes this dark, Rachel could actually eat this up. People don't want her to play the polished, perfect princess anymore. They want to see her snap, scheme, rule, and Netflix knows exactly how to use that energy. Because what's more iconic than turning the girl Disney discarded into the centerpiece of their rival remake?
Look at this. Look at this face. What can be said about this level of narcissism here?
But Netflix is also looking at fresh faces, girls who haven't been chewed up by the Hollywood machine yet. Names being thrown around include young breakout stars from streaming hits like Outer Banks, Wednesday, The Summer I Turned Pretty Bold, TikTok fashion icons who are low-key trained performers, even 1 or 2 actresses from foreign dramas who've recently gone viral for their lethal screen presence. The vibe is clear. Netflix wants someone cool, chaotic, and magnetic. Not a passive princess, but a girl who can own the screen and make the world bend around her. And with a script that's reportedly full of betrayal, dark magic, and serious feminist undertones, this isn't a cute fairy tale. This is going to be a war story wrapped in a ball gown.
Cheering for herself.
While Netflix is pushing forward with their edgy take, Disney's version is aging like milk, and they haven't even released the film yet. From the outdated tone to the awkward visuals to the controversy that just won't die, it's clear that Disney tried to do a modern version without actually understanding the assignment. Now, with Netflix cooking a take that actually feels current, Disney's remake looks stale, safe, and stuck. And the industry is noticing. Producers, showrunners, casting directors. Everyone's looking at this moment as a turning point, where the ownership of classic fairy tales is up for grabs. Netflix is betting that viewers want something different now. Not perfection, not nostalgia, but power, chaos, and characters that are allowed to be flawed, messy, and maybe even a little evil. And if they get the casting right, they could pull off the biggest cultural reset in recent memory.
And to put 7 people with dwarfism on camera in a major Disney movie, there's still power there. If the story is offensive, change the story, don't change the character.
We need to stop pretending this is just another reboot. This is not about 2 studios making different takes on a classic. This is about control, culture, and which company gets to decide what a modern fairy tale even looks like. And right now, Disney is still stuck in 1937. Netflix is rewriting the entire genre. This isn't about dwarfs and dresses anymore. This is about narrative power. And Netflix has the pen in their hand.
That at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
The ego on this girl is ridiculous. Wow.
Think about the last few years. We've had so many reboots, so many lifeless, watered-down, studio-safe remakes that tried to modernize old stories by adding shallow empowerment, a new dress, and a rewritten line or 2. But that's not what audiences want anymore. They're tired of fake feminism. They're over corporate messaging. They want stories that are messy, dangerous, and real. And Netflix, they're finally leaning all the way into that. Their take on Snow White is being described as dark fantasy. Political drama meets character-driven rebellion. Not I'm not like other girls feminism. Not I don't need a prince surface-level scripting. But a world where femininity is weaponized, innocence is a myth, and the happy ending is something Snow White has to fight dirty for.
And they postponed the release of this thing, Ben, for a year because their star, Rachel Zegler, was so unlikable, told all Trump supporters that they could off.
Here's where it gets juicy. Industry insiders are saying this. Netflix reboot is causing real tension behind closed doors at other studios. Because the truth is, fairy tales are big money. They sell toys, park tickets, franchises, merch, but they also come with rules, especially at Disney. Rules like, the princess must always be aspirational. She can be strong, but not angry. She can be smart, but not arrogant. She can rebel, but only if she's still likable. Netflix's version burns all those rules alive. And now that the public is showing interest in a version of Snow White that doesn't feel sanitized or staged, the pressure is on, because if Netflix pulls this off, it doesn't just embarrass Disney. It puts every other studio on notice. The era of perfectly polite heroines in sparkling gowns, over.
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely when it got announced.
She wasn't a stalker, by the way.
Thing that was like trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
Now, let's talk about Rachel. Even though Netflix hasn't officially confirmed casting, her name is still trending in connection to the project. And the conversation around her has completely shifted. She's gone from, she ruined Disney's Snow White to, she was never the problem. She just needed the right version of the role. And if Netflix offers her a second chance, but not as the Disney-style protagonist, as something darker, meaner, more powerful, it would be a redemption arc for the ages. She wouldn't have to play it safe anymore. She wouldn't have to pretend to be pure and perfect. She could be bitter, complex, misunderstood, and finally, respected. And let's be real, nothing would shatter Disney's confidence more than the same actress they pushed aside becoming the star of their rivals. Hit reboot, it would be poetic, it would be savage, and it would sell like wildfire.
And so it was like,
those people.
Very much this, yes. It
Yeah,
was this
people that we
awakening
need to educate, the people that we need to love into awareness.
love them in the right direction.
For years, Disney has acted like it owns these stories. Not just Snow White, but Cinderella, Ariel, Aurora, Belle, Tiana, and not just the rights, the meaning. They've built a brand on the idea that they decide what fairy tales mean. Netflix is shattering that illusion, because now they're saying, we don't need your songs, your color palettes, or your park-friendly plotlines. We're telling the story our way, and audiences, they're ready. People are exhausted by safe storytelling. They want villains with depth, heroines who mess up, narratives that aren't afraid to take real risks. Netflix isn't just offering a new version of Snow White. They're offering a new kind of legacy.
The people who you need to entertain, the people who you need to serve, the people who pay your salary.
If Netflix nails the tone, the visuals, the writing, and picks the right lead, this could launch a new era of fairy tale reimaginings across platforms. Imagine what comes next. A feminist Red Riding Hood that flips the predator-prey narrative. Sleeping Beauty, where the villain isn't the one in the tower. A Beauty and the Beast where the beast is actually society's obsession with perfection. Fairy tales aren't dying. They're just outgrowing the studios that refuse to evolve. And Netflix? They're standing at the front of that movement, with Snow White as the spark.
Every single white male is a piece of shit, and the woman is the hero, and all authority is bad, and all business is bad, but government is good. And most people don't know what they're watching. She, unfortunately, sort of pulled the curtain back and people knew exactly what was going on.
This isn't just a remake versus remake moment anymore. This is about who owns the culture. Who gets to write the stories we tell about women, power, identity, and legacy. And right now, the fight over Snow White is revealing exactly how fragile Disney's fairy tale monopoly has become. For nearly a century, Disney controlled this narrative. They told us what princesses looked like, how they behaved, who they loved, what they feared, how they triumphed. They built a billion-dollar empire around one version of the story, but the cracks in the kingdom are showing. And Netflix isn't just slipping through those cracks, they're tearing the whole castle down.
When people watched it originally in 1937 in the theaters, it was an amazing experience because for most people, it was the first color movie. But second of all, people had so connected emotionally with the character of Snow White that when she eats from the apple and she dies, people were literally weeping in the theater because they liked the character of Snow White so much.
Let's be honest, Disney's version of Snow White is a historical artifact. Sweet, safe, predictable. It's about beauty, kindness, and finding love if you just wait long enough in the woods. Netflix's version, it's about burning the forest down, carving your own crown, and asking, what if the villain had a point? And that's the choice audiences are being given for the first time ever, because until now, fairy tales were presented like facts. You didn't question the format. You just followed the formula. Now, viewers are demanding options. They want fairy tales that are dark, weird, wild, queer, angry, unforgiving. They want heroines who aren't safe, but dangerous. Not passive, but powerful, and the biggest studio in the world suddenly has to compete on a playing field they never expected.
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely, when it got announced,
He wasn't a stalker, by the way.
thing that was like trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
Executives, agents, writers, showrunners, they're all watching this unfold like it's the Super Bowl of storytelling. Because Snow White isn't just a film, she's a template. She's the test case for whether old school IP can survive in a world where audiences want complexity over nostalgia. If Disney's version flops and Netflix's hits, we're going to see everything shift. Studios will start asking different questions. What if Cinderella wasn't rescued but escaped? What if Belle didn't fall for the beast but became him? What if Ariel never gave up her voice? She weaponized it, and if those questions start getting greenlit, the entire fairy tale genre explodes wide open. Because once people realize these stories can be reinvented, the idea that Disney owns them disappears, and that changes everything.
Everyone is serving in that. It's just her going, we need to no, you don't need, it's not your job. Your job is to entertain. You are paid to entertain.
Whether she ends up starring in Netflix's version or not, Rachel Zegler will always be tied to this cultural moment. She was the face of Disney's failed attempt to modernize a classic, and now she might become the symbol of what happens. When a studio tries to silence its star instead of backing her, if she crosses over to Netflix, it's a redemption arc. If she doesn't, she still becomes the cautionary tale, a warning about what happens when studios try to force old stories onto a new generation without listening. Either way, she's no longer just Snow White. She's part of the reason Snow White is changing forever.
A video of herself in a theater. Maybe I think she bought that ticket right there. Please enjoy.
For the first time in decades, it's not about what the studios say, it's about what the people want. TikTok edits, fan threads, YouTube breakdowns, reaction videos, meme culture. The audience is now the marketing machine, the opinion makers, the storytellers, the jury. And if they decide that Netflix's version hits harder, feels fresher, and speaks louder, that becomes canon, because Disney can pump billions into promotion. But it only takes one scene, one line, one moment from Netflix's Snow White to go viral and rewrite everything. The studios used to own the narrative. Now they have to earn it.
There was an in-depth piece, like a behind-the-scenes piece, talking about how they've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years now.
So here's where we land. Disney had the crown. They wrote the rules. They told the stories we all memorized. But now, a new player is coming for the throne. With a sharper story, a darker heroine, a cast that isn't afraid to be messy, and a fan base that's ready for a new kind of magic. Netflix isn't asking permission. They're rewriting the legacy, and Snow White might just become the first princess to start a revolution. Not with a kiss, not with a song, but with a story that says, you can't control me anymore. So what do you think? Is Netflix about to drop the fairy tale bomb that takes down Disney's whole kingdom? Would you rather watch the classic, or are you ready for the chaos? Drop your thoughts in the comments, like this video, subscribe for more behind the scenes tea, and hit the bell so you don't miss the next time a studio feud turns into a streaming war. Because this isn't a happily ever after, this is just the beginning.